Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Welcome back to Season 2 of Food by the Game. Uh, in episodes 1 and 2, I shared with you the contents of 2 letters that he sent to me. In this episode 3, I'm going to share with you what he shared with me about how he lives every day worrying if he's going to be exposed and what happened to him when he was exposed, right? This episode is called The Witness List. Dear Joe, I hope that you still look at me as a person that is deserving of respect. I know that some of the things that I've said to you in the first 2 letters that I wrote you puts me in a bad light, especially if you're still into the street life. But I'm not a bad person. I just got caught up. The same way a lot of people get caught up in the dope game, I got caught up in the snitch game. I didn't want to go to prison, but I didn't think that I had what it took to really pull back and let them do what they do, right? But let me tell you how it is on a daily basis for somebody like me. And I think your guests, your listeners need to understand that. Every day I worry, when is it going to come out that I'm setting people up, testifying against people? When is this going to happen? And it didn't take long for it to happen. But let me tell you a little bit about what I went through physically and mentally. Physically, I got sick. I developed ulcers. I started popping all kinds of Tums and pills like that. Whenever I was trying to work out to relieve the stress, I couldn't think about anything other than when are they going to call me again and have me do something that I don't want to do. It was just like I had no control over my life. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to get out of it because the options that I had to get out of it were not really options to me. It was either continue to do what they wanted me to do or go to jail. And I just did not want to do that. I even considered taking my own life, but I didn't want to do that either. I just wanted out of this situation. I just wanted out of this situation, Joe. But let me tell you how I got exposed and how everybody found out about me. You remember in the last letter that I told you about, the guy that I had to set up, they wanted me to set up my plug, right? But I lied and made up a story, told them about this guy that was under, well, he wasn't under the guy that I was, but he was, as far as like in the streets, he wasn't as well known as the guy that I was getting my product from, but he was known. And they knew about it. And they knew when I told them this story that I was lying, but they went along with it. And at the end of the day, they had me set him up for a 2-ounce buy. And I did it. But what I didn't realize, but they told me, was that if he didn't take a plea, that I would have to come to court to testify. But they told me that usually in these cases that it never went to trial. So I wouldn't have to testify and my identity would be kept secret. That turned out to be a lie. In this case, it did go to trial. And what happened is, I don't think a lot of people know it, but what happens when you're getting ready to go to trial, the person that's on trial, all the evidence against him, they have to turn over to his lawyer and to him. And when they did that, they had to turn over the tape recordings on the wire that I wore, and they had to turn over my name. The DA tried to fight to keep my name withheld, my identity withheld, but the judge said no. The accused has a right to face the accuser. And I was part of the accusing because I was a confidential informant. I didn't realize how serious this stuff was. So I found myself worrying and wondering, because the guy that I'm talking about, he was out on bond. They didn't lock him. Well, they locked him up. He made bond. He had a lot of money. He made bond, a lot of property. So he's out. So what he started to do when he got the witness list and he saw my name on it, he started to tell everybody in the neighborhood that I wore wire against him. And Joe, I'm going to tell you something. It was the worst day of my life when I had one of my childhood friends pull up on me and ask me to get in the car with him and take a ride with him. And we're riding, listening to some music and all this, and I could tell that he's upset with me because he keeps glancing over at me while he's driving, looking at me out of, with that side eye. And I knew, or I felt, that he wanted to ask me what was going on. Because he normally just didn't bump down on me like that and ask me to go for a ride. He would normally stop the car, get in the car, get out of the car, and then we would just sit on the porch. But it was almost like he didn't want to be seen with me. We were in his car and the windows rolled up and it had dark tint. So we were riding around and he asked me, is it true? And Joe, at that time, in that moment, he didn't even have to explain to me what he was asking me. I lowered my head and I told him, yeah, it's true. And he kept driving. He said, man, tell me why you did that. So I gave him the rundown and told him that I had gotten caught up and all of this and that. He's like, nah. He said, that don't matter. He said, you know what it is in the streets. If you get caught up like that, you got to take your weight, man. He said, you broke the #1 rule. Take your weight. And he said, man, you can't do this, man. You can't get up on that stand and testify against dude, man. You'll never be able to live here again. So I got upset because I know, and he does too, that I'm not the only person in the neighborhood that's snitching. But he didn't want to hear that. I was his friend. And he didn't want to be associated with anybody that would do anything like that. But what am I supposed to do? If I go back to the police and tell them I'm not testifying now, I got a problem. I got to go to prison. It's almost like he wants me to go to prison. That's how my mind was playing tricks on me. It made me turn against my own friend because my friend came to me with what's real for the streets anyway. He was telling me not to do it. So I told him, man, stop the car. Let me out. When I got out of the car, on that long walk back to the house, I kept thinking, man, I got problems. What if somebody tries to do something to me before the trial? So when I got back to the house, I called the DA. And I said, how long is this going to be before we go to trial? And he told me it might be a few months, it might be longer. I said, is it okay if I leave town because I'm getting a lot of problems out here? And he said, what type of problems are you having? Has anybody said anything to you? And I didn't want to tell him that my partner, my childhood friend, had just told me not to do it. I didn't want to tell him that because I know how this thing goes. So I said, no, I just got a lot of people looking at me funny. And he said, well, we'll do whatever we got to do to protect you. He said, I'm going to make sure that we have extra patrols riding around in the neighborhood. I said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I don't need somebody riding up and down the street where I'm living at. Then they'll know for sure. He said, I got to ride this out, man. He said, but I might leave town for a few days. And the DA said, no, we don't need you to leave town. We need you to do something else. And I went silent for a minute. I just told this man that I wasn't feeling safe. And I asked him, could I leave town for my own safety, mentally and physically? And he told me, no, they had something else for me to do. That was another example of how I knew they didn't care nothing about me. They didn't care about my well-being, Joe. It was about what they wanted. And that's another thing that I want your listeners to understand, how the system has taken me and twisted me into a pretzel without any regard for my health, mentally or physically. They say they'll do whatever they got to do to protect me, but they keep wanting me to work. And I don't know what I'm going to do. So I hung the phone up and I thought about what he had just said. And I seriously thought about jumping in my car and leaving town and forgetting all of this. But I knew that that wouldn't last long. I didn't have that kind of money that I could just leave, stop hustling, and live a different life. I was trapped in the game. I was trapped in the game. They knew I was still hustling, but that didn't matter as long as I gave them people. It didn't matter. So that's when I started to think about this thing in a way that was beneficial to me. And I got real raw with it. I started to think about all the people that made it hard for me to move up and make more money and become that dude. So that's when I started to plot. If I was going to be snitching, I'm going to snitch on all the competition and knock them all out of the way. And then I'll be the man. And then won't nobody dare mess with me because I'll be the one that they'll be eating off of. That's how this game gets you. Even when you're doing something foul, like what I was doing, I had to think of a way within that construct to survive this thing. Put myself in a position to where they all would need me. It wouldn't matter what they thought about me. It wouldn't matter what I did. It wouldn't matter what I said. Open court or not. They would all rationalize and say, well, he won't do it to me, not knowing that I would if they become a threat to me. So all of them started to do that. And that's what happened. As this thing moved on, I started giving the DA names. Names of people that I knew, except for my plug. I wouldn't give up my plug. But I eliminated targets and competition for my plug so that my plug would become the main dude in the town and I would become his main distributor. And this went on for months and months. And I had literally testified against dozens of people. Dozens of people. That's what I did. And I only started to think like that after that witness list came out. Because if not for that witness list, I wouldn't have got as serious about this as I did. I thought I would be anonymous. But now that I was out there on blast and everybody knew who I was, then let's see how they treat me when I'm the one that they have to depend on to eat. When I'm the one that they have to depend on to take care of their families, to drive their cars, to buy their clothes, to go to concerts, to go to football games. Let me see how they treat me when I have all the say. That's what we're dealing with. And that's how the game twisted my mind. And if anybody out there doesn't believe that it can happen to them, they're lying. They're lying. The neighborhood that I come from now, it snitches all over the place. From the low-level dealers to the high-level dealers. But they got that work. And they got that work, and they're willing to sell it to anybody that's willing to buy it. So the people that are coming to buy it, they do the same thing that I did. They rationalize, I got to do this instead of getting a job. The same way I rationalized I had to tell it, they rationalize that this is as good as it's going to get for me. So they don't care if they get it from a snitch or not. The streets don't care nothing about that either. Because the streets are cold and dark. And all the street cares about is bodies. Bodies. Stacked on top of bodies. Doesn't care what color you are, what age you are. Doesn't care about anything. But what gender you are, the streets just needs to be fed. And people talk all of this crap every day talking about what they won't do, what they will do. I'm telling you, Joe, I know what they'll do because I was one of those dudes and I got twisted up. And if I can get twisted up, anybody can get twisted up. Take that to the bank. Ain't nothing funny about the game. Ain't nothing twisted about the game other than the people in it. So year after year, I kept getting bigger and bigger, Joe. Getting more dope. I'm selling weed, cocaine, heroin, meth. You name it, I can get it. And I got the majority of people in the city going through me. Every now and then something will pop up about me. But guess what? I got a hit squad too. In the hit squad, they don't care nothing about what I did. All they care about is am I going to pay them every week? And I do, and I pay them good. And if I tell them to go get somebody, they go get them. And guess what? Police don't care. DA don't care. I'm feeding them names every week. Every week. I done got so cold in the game, I don't care if you just a low-level dealer. Ain't nothing moving unless it moves through me and my plug. And I'm going to get rid of you. You either going to bow down to me or you're not going to eat. If you don't bow down to me, you're not going to eat. This is how the game is right now. And anybody that don't believe that, you lying. You lying. I got gang members that buy from me. They don't care. I know they talk about me, but they won't try me. I've had a few, though, that try to rob me. I use the police for them, too. I'm not taking any shorts from anybody. I'm not playing no games with anybody. You could take that to the bank, Joe. I'm going to conclude this episode, y'all. And I hope that you took something from this that you can pass on to somebody that you love or yourself. Because the game is raw. Everybody know what this guy is telling me is true. Everybody know what it is. But that's what we're living with now. But see, I see this different. I see it different. And I know a lot of you won't agree with me. I know you won't agree with me. But see, what we've done as a society, we've become more concerned with who's telling the truth as opposed to are they telling the truth? Think about what I just said. Do you care who's telling you the truth? Or do you care about the truth just as it is? Most people say, I ain't listening to them. It's an old drug dealer. He's a snitch. She's a prostitute. He's a trick. He's a peon. He's a gang member. These statuses that we attach to people goes to whether we believe them or not. And that is what allows somebody like this person that's writing me to get twisted up in his mind and believe that what he's doing is beneficial to him. We know it's not. But in his mind it is. In his mind it is. I just want y'all to understand that I don't agree with what he's doing. Not because it's morally wrong, because I think if he's telling the truth, I don't care that he's manipulating it. He's telling the truth. We don't need people up and down the street selling this poison to the neighborhoods, to the communities, to the kids. But he's just as culpable as they are. What I'm concerned about is the system knowing that this guy is using them and they're cool with it. He should be taken off the streets just as quick as the people that he's telling on. You understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what I'm saying? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.